And I must quantify all of this and say, none of this is investing advice. None of this is life advice. This is my path, my journey, and how I ended up where I'm at. And it's not a great place. So don't take my advice. This is just what I'm doing. Some of us have been locked in student loan hell, right? Why don't we start the story? I have always been an artist. Like I've always drawn something, right? So in school, I was always drawing. So logically, what the conclusion is, go to school for art, right? I mean, any time in school, like any lecture that got boring, I was like, and like every test, drawing in the margins, constantly drawing. Didn't matter what the utensil was, just drawing stuff. So that led to doing very poorly in school and getting a really horrible GPA, which may or may not have come to bite me in the ass later on. So, I mean, when I say horrible, I mean like sub 2.0 GPA. Lucky I graduated GPA. Horrible on the SATs. By every measure, I should not have been in school anymore, and I should not continue on in school, including college of any sort. Mom was single mom, single mom, boyfriend who was doing kind of his own thing. Wasn't a huge contributor, but was kind of a contributor. Also the father of my siblings, who are wonderful, and I love them and I adore them. And but he was not like forward thinking financially, and she was taking care of all of that kind of stuff. I graduated. She went back to school for nursing and all that stuff to go be a nurse. No room for me. Kicked out, 17, almost 18, and moved to California with $130 in my pocket. And then used 60 of that to go from San Jose down to Santa Barbara, where I ended up hanging out with somebody who I used to hang out with in high school. And luckily her mom was when I was time for me to go back up to Northern California to live with my uncle, I was like, I don't want to go back up there. San Jose sucks. Santa Barbara's awesome. And she said, well, stay here, get a job. You can sleep on the couch until you find a place and everything. It all worked out. Took that first year off from school and didn't know what the fuck I was doing. Then met an artist woman who, I was still drawing all this time, like constantly drawing. Wanted to get into comic books, wanted to be a comic book artist, and I was constantly drawing. And she saw those drawings, and she was an artist, and she was doing like set dressing for pageants and stuff like that, and like had a workshop and all this stuff. And she convinced me to go back to school. And I was like, I fucking suck at school. I'll never make it through school. I don't know how to pay for school. I don't know how to do anything with that stuff, right? Nobody had ever taught me that stuff. So I applied to get into the city college. Got into the city college. Sarah, why did I get bad grades? On purpose? I don't know why I got bad grades. I think it was because I was bored with the curriculum. Like I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an artist. So sitting through classes that had no relationship, and I couldn't see the relationships between most of these classes and what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to go. I'm like, I'm going to go there. I'm going to be an illustrator. I'm going to be a comic book artist. That's my goal. And so everything else was just chaff. It wasn't worth it, right? It wasn't worth my time. So applied to the city college and got in, because it's a city college and anybody can get in, even if they have a shitty GPA. So I got in and took the classes, or set up the classes, took 2 art classes, which I hadn't had because I fucked off so hard in high school that they didn't let me take art classes because I had to take math classes to make up for the shit that I failed. So I took art classes, I took 2 art classes, and then I took 3 academics. Immediately dropped the academics after 2 weeks and just took art classes. Then the second term that I was there, I took nothing but art classes, and I took 5 art classes. And I was in fucking heaven, and it was badass. And so then, once I did a couple of terms of that, I learned how to go to school. But I learned how to budget my time, I learned how to do homework, I learned how to do freelance, and I learned how to do my job all at the same time. Granted, I'm like 19 years old and living literally like probably making $125 a week at the tops. And life is rough, to say the least. But I'm going to school, I'm doing art stuff, and I've got, I'm a crappy job. And so I stay in school long enough to get scholarships, and then they start paying me to be there. I think I ultimately was getting like $2,000 a semester to be there, and it was a wonderful, glorious thing. And I just inching up that ladder a little bit, right? Took a job at a company, almost became an audio engineer. Audio engineer guy says, or the guy that owns the company says, I need you to be here full time, 60 hours a week. So do you want to be an artist, or do you want to be an audio technician, engineer, producer guy? And looking at the landscape right around 2001, 2002, I was like, wow, the music landscape looks pretty fucking bleak, right? Because this is right around the time when Napster did all the stuff, and there was like a huge flux in that industry. And I said, there's no way that I'm going to take this job and then succeed. I need to buckle down and get into art. So I had to choose career paths early on. The guy who had said to me, you need to make a choice, was really cool. And he was super supportive. He was very much a father figure for me. And he was, he basically said, if you choose this path, you gotta do it right. And so I did, where I was going every weekend. I was driving from Santa Barbara down to CalArts, and I was taking their free workshops as if I was a student there. I was doing the figure drawing stuff. I was applying to the different schools and everything. Oh, and I forgot, over this period of time that I was in City College, I was applying to CalArts because I wanted to be an animator, right? And every year I was getting denied. And I was getting denied because I fell between the cracks. Like I didn't make any money, so I needed financial aid, but I wasn't of minority, so that I could get like bumped up into that category. So there was nowhere for me to get assistance to do that. I didn't have anybody to co-sign loans. There was no co-signers and no money. And so I kind of slipped on it all. But I kept on trying, and I got denied 4 times at CalArts. The final time, the entrance counselor says to me, if you were a minority, you would have been in already, but you're not. And I was like, that is life. I will figure it out. So I then the following year, which was 2002, I applied to CalArts, Art Center, and Otis. And so I got into Otis, and I got into Art Center, and CalArts once again denied me. Guess I wasn't animation material. So then we applied to 3 schools and got into 2. So at the time, Otis had said, we'll start you at sophomore year and give you, I think it was like $10,000 in scholarship money per term. And Art Center said, basically, Art Center was more highly rated, and I think they gave me, I want to say my scholarship that they offered was $1,600 per term, which wouldn't pay for books, wouldn't pay for housing, wouldn't pay for anything, right? But here's the thing. Art Center was rated 2 in the nation at the time for illustration. At this point, Otis is a world-class art school too. A lot of the people that I went to school with went over to Otis and started teaching, and like they are now really, really well positioned. But at the time, they were like 36th in the nation for illustration. And I'm like, if I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it right. And I talked to my boss / father figure about it, and he was like, do the one that's going to get you the farthest in the end. Of course, this guy went to like MIT and all that stuff, so he was like, ride on the name and pay whatever it takes to get there. And that's that's an old school way of thinking, right? But it is pervasive. Names are pretty important, unfortunately, right? I didn't have any money. No money whatsoever. Yeah, I didn't know who to turn to. So I went to my uncle. My uncle was like, I can't co-sign loans for you. Went to my mom. My mom was like, I'm doing schooling myself. Anybody and everybody who might be able to help me out. And I wasn't able to do it. There was just nobody until my grandfather, who had never really liked me much. He thought I was a little piece of shit. And I don't know if it was his dementia setting in around 85 or whatever, or what, but he agreed to co-sign. And he was basically the reason that I had the money to go through that first term. So he co-signed my initial loan to get me going. And then I didn't need a co-signer after that, right? I signed them all myself. The entire way through Art Center, every term I would walk into the financial aid office and I would just sign a piece of paper. What does that mean? I don't know. Was there ever a sit down where somebody said to me, hey, you're taking on $30,000 worth of debt every 3 months for 3 years at a time, roughly, right? Or no, it started off lower than that, but it ramped up whilst I was in school. Initially, tuition was, I think, $12,500, but that's tuition. What about books? What about fees? What about housing? What about all the things you need to go to school full time? Because if I was going to do this, I didn't want to be working. I wanted school to be my job, and it needed to be at this school because this school was a complete boot camp. So the initial loan was for at least $20K. But like I was saying, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't focused on other things like trying to pay the bills and everything. These loans were going to get me through school. I stand by that because I feel like if you're going to do school, do it right? If you're going to study something, focus. Because if you're not, somebody else is. And the people that are focused are going to succeed better than you are. That being said, I took on the loans. I used the loans to pay the tuition, pay the food, cost of living, room and board, all that stuff in Los Angeles, high digit area, and they don't have housing at Art Center. So I focused on school. I did my best. I also lost my 6-year relationship as soon as Art Center started. Kind of knew that was going to happen. There was a lot of stories of people going into that school and it taking over their lives, and I was already on the way out of that relationship. So it was like, I took a hit then, and that actually affected my GPA because that was my worst term. It was the only time that I got anything lower than a B, because I really learned how to study at junior college. That was one of the important lessons, was how to study, how to focus, how to manage your time. Those are the 3 things that I got out of junior college, and I brought those to Art Center when I went. That being said, that worst term knocked my GPA down to 3.78. Yeah, but I still graduated with honors at the end. Graduated in on December 16th, 2006, with honors, a 3.6 or 7, something like that, GPA, and $134,000 in debt. That's the important part, right? Also, the important part of that is the timing, because December 16th, 2006 gives me just under a year before the economy takes a big, gigantic shit. That first year, I mean, immediately I was hustling. By the time January rolled around in 2007, I already had some freelance gigs lined up, and I was doing stuff. That first year out, I did the deferral thing, right? Because you have 6 months before you need to pay on your student loans, and so I hustled, and then at that 6-month mark, I started paying the bare minimum, right? So mid 2007, paying bare minimum, because that's all I can afford. And at that time, they're small payments. They're like $100 and something, and it's not that bad. But also at that point, fresh out of school, anybody knows, fresh out of school, you're doing everything you can to hustle it, but it's hard, right? So I paid that bare minimum for about 6 months, probably a little bit more. Got a freelance job with Nickelodeon Virtual Worlds that was it was supposed to be a 2-month contract that turned into a kind of permalance thing, but it was at half my day rate, which I agreed to because it was supposed to be a 2-month contract. So, I did the 2-month contract, and at 6 months in, the economy started looking really bad. So, 2008, everything's starting to slide. There's no jobs out there for artists. Daniel can attest to this. It was pretty grim, right? And then the economy tanked. 6 months into the economy tanking, they offered me a full-time job. They offered me a full-time job at even lower than what my day rate was. My day rate was positioned so that I could pay my bills and pay my student loans. When they did that, and I didn't have any work, I had to defer my student loans. First deferral was in 2008. At that time, Navint had said your only option is to defer. There was no offer of any other thing. They weren't like, we're gonna put you in a payment program based on your income. There was none of that stuff. It was basically like no other option than deferring. Nothing was offered to me, and come to find out later on that Navient, Sally Mae, was trying to make numbers of putting people into deferral and stuff like that. So they were pushing these products onto people, and not telling them that, hey, the government has programs that you can get into that will make it so that your payments are lower, graduated payments based on your income. They'll look at your taxes, and they will determine how much you can afford out of what you take home. Usually 10%. In my case, it probably would have been like $50. I was fucking slim back in those days. I stayed at Nickelodeon for 4 years. I hardly got a raise. By the time I left, I was making what I was making during my freelance time, which means that in that 4 years, I was not able to pay my student loans. any of them for 4 years because of that. Partially because of the economy, partially because by the time that stuff rolled around, the security of having a paycheck kept me there. That security was a false blanket of security because they weren't paying me enough to pay my bills. And what happened is, over those 4 years, y'all ready for this? $50,000 in interest capitalized. During that 4 years, grandfather passed away. So guess what happens when the person who co-signs your loan passes away? They have the option of telling you that that loan is due and you have to pay it. They have the option to do that. So that option was not exercised, luckily. But what did happen was my family demanded that I refi because they weren't getting their inheritance. They were holding his estate until that loan was taken care of. So I had to refinance, and I had to refinance my federal loan to the tune of, I think it was $70,000 or something like that. And at the time, it was a 3.5% interest rate. The refi interest was 12.5%. So very quickly, money started stacking up against me. It's 2010, 2011 before I leave that job with $194,000 in student loan debt. So thanks to Daniel, yes, our good friend Daniel Landerman, fucking watching our backs and like, dude, you got to get out of there. And I did, because if I had stayed there, it would have killed me, and it would have just stacked up and stacked up and stacked up. So I left that job and started sketching, and it was slow going at first, but I made more sketching than I did doing the freelance work, and it was still freelance, but freelance prior to going to Nickelodeon. It makes sense because I was basically like 5 years into my career, and I should have been making more anyway, right? By that point, but I wasn't, because of the place that I worked, and that afforded me the ability to start paying off these student loans. Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a small mortgage, and I always said that when people are like, how much have you been paying? And I said it's a small mortgage. It's a mortgage anywhere but here in Los Angeles, right? Or New York, or it's a mortgage in the Midwest. Doing the sketching actually started to get me above the board, and of course, I'm a little panicky early on about like, how do I do all this? How do I do the freelance and the business side of things? But it all came out in the wash, and I learned how to do all my deductions, my standard deductions, my other deductions, all of this stuff, and I was flourishing. Between the years of 2011 and 2016, right? Prior to all of that, trying to get Navint to do something to help me in some way. The only things that I had read were like, get them to put you into a 0% interest thing, and to do that you have to not pay for this many days. So I like put it on my calendar, like, don't pay your student loans for this long, and then they will allow you in. And that's exactly what I did. But I'll tell you what it did. You know what happens when you don't pay your fucking student loans, right? Stop paying the loans for 128 days, and they put me into a program at 0% interest. And it took forever. And my credit score went from like 8 something, because I had never had any delinquencies or anything like that, to 550 or something. Just fucking destroyed it. But they ultimately put me into the program. And the program lasted for a while. I don't remember how long it was. And then these things started popping up where they were like, oh yeah, you can pay, there's graduated payment programs based on your income and everything. And at this point, I'm starting to make more income. So I went from like trying to pay this down on that 0% thing, like putting every spare penny. And I need to be clear, I've lived paycheck to paycheck my entire life. Meaning always looking at that bank account number. Always figuring out, okay, make sure to put this there and that's there. And, you know, I got into the sketching thing and I actually learned that you can have a savings account and you can put money away in case something shitty happens, rather than like scrambling and juggling and trying to do all this shit when something shitty happens, right? Finally, they put me into that program, and I'm still taking every spare cent that I have and paying as much as I can towards these student loans. But I'm doing the snowball method, where you pay the one, you basically pay the one that has the lowest amount due every month, just so that I can accomplish something, right? There's the avalanche method, which is the highest interest rate first, and you pay that all the way down, so you pay less interest in the long run. But I was doing the snowball just so that I could win, just so that I could pay something down. But here's the thing, when you do that method, the other ones are being paid at the minimum. Started paying one loan at a time down, the snowball method. Lowest due first to pay off the loans faster, regardless of interest rate. Ultimately, you lose money in the end because here's the thing, in paying down the snowball method and doing that snowball method, what you're looking at is one loan gets paid down, and that's fucking great because you're just like, okay, I can get through this. This is a $20,000 loan. In like 10 months, I can have this thing paid down. And then you look over there at the other loan that's $54,000 and it's accruing interest like a fucking madman. And you're like, but that, and I get that loan and this loan, and they're all just like, one goes down and the rest go up, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, ugh. Just trying to juggle all those things and keep on point, like just paying that loan every month and making it happen. Plus, you know, doing the business side of things, doing the freelance stuff and everything like that. It's ultimately super daunting, and living paycheck to paycheck. Like every time something would come in, it would be like, okay, this goes to rent, this goes to this goes to this. I have this much left. Okay, if I take 200 of that and I put that towards my savings, I'll be okay. And then all of this, so that there's like $100 left in my account, all of this goes to paying student loans. Every single fucking paycheck. And it's been that way for years. I can't tell you the number of times that Daniel's like, we got paid. And I'm like, yeah, I got no money left already. And he's like, what? You know? Like, I don't understand. All because of that deferral, right? The deferral that I had to do because the economy shat the bed. And I ended up going an additional like 40 or 50,000 in debt. I haven't even looked at the numbers because they make me want to fucking vomit. So this is where it gets interesting. In this point where I was doing well, I started putting money away. $200 every paycheck, no matter what. If it came in, it immediately went into a brokerage account. And that $200, like I didn't even see it. As if there was an auto deposit in my account from a client, it was immediately deducted and went into a Vanguard account. Like I was saying, I put $200 every paycheck into a brokerage account, which gave me some money to play around with on top of what I was putting out. I was saying, okay, I need to take this money and do something with it so I can learn how to do these things. So I can learn about investing, right? Use Vanguard as a place where I did my SEP IRA, which was the way that you keep your taxes low when you are freelance, is you open an SEP IRA and you wait until the end of the year. So everything that I'm making is going into savings. With the SEP at the end of the year, you get all your taxes together, you go to your tax person and you sit down and you go, okay, these are the numbers. So if I put, how much can I put into my SEP? Because you can do it right up until that tax time. You can for an SEP, you can deposit literally the night before taxes, right? And it can be for the previous year. So the lady would do the taxes and she'd say, well, if you put in this much money, you will save this much money, and the rest of it will go into the IRA for you at a later date. So if you don't do that already, you might think about doing that as a freelancer. Basically what it is it's an account that acts like a 401k, but you are both the employee and the employer. So you, as an employee, can max out at $5,500 a year, 50 or $6,500 now, and then up to 25% of your income as 1099 income can go into that tax-free. Yes, it totally offsets the self-employment tax and brings your taxable income way down, so that you pay less in taxes. And that's what she did every time. She's like, well, without putting in $28,000, you're gonna pay another $7,000 in taxes. So how much can you afford to put in, is what she would ask me. And then I would have to know my numbers before I went there, right? But that's why everything that I made out of the year that didn't go to paying the bills was in that savings account and waiting for the end of the year, so that I can just basically go home, click transfer into Vanguard, and it was the number that she gave me. So every year it was exactly, I coordinated with her the exact number that needed to go in, and it was there. So now this entire time I've been continuing to pay those student loans, right? All the way up till today. And I'm continuing to live paycheck to paycheck. Along that way, I want to say in 2014, I opened I put money into that brokerage account, and that amount that I was putting in every paycheck started to build, and I invested in a couple of companies. I put money into AT&T and Disney and Netflix and Google and Tesla. So there was all these little, and that was in the 401k as well as the brokerage. I invested in stocks in a brokerage because a brokerage gave me liquidity, which means that I can sell out of the brokerage. The 401k, the SEP IRA rather, you can't pull money out of. Bottom line, if you pull it out, you take a tax hit, 10% plus your nominal tax rate, and you're fucked. They'll basically end up with like 60%, 40 to 60% of what you took out. So don't do it. Ever. Find another way. You're better off taking out a personal loan at a 6% interest rate than you are in pulling out of a retirement account ever. The brokerage gave me liquidity. And so then 2017 rolls around. Stocks are doing well. I haven't put much in there, but it's grown. That growth allowed me to cash in some stock. And so I cashed in, I want to say $7,000 of Tesla stock. What do you think happened that year? 2017. So 7K in Tesla, I pulled that out and I put that into this emerging market, emerging sector, cryptocurrency. My initial foray into crypto was very small. It was basically that 7K from Tesla. I put it into a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of Ethereum. They did all right. And so I watched those markets, and I'm learning how the markets work by reading articles. I was literally waking and reading articles on investing and stocks and Bitcoin and currency and everything. I was not studying art. I wasn't doing art in my spare time. There was none of this stuff going on. I was reading, I had gamified how to invest, and how to grow, how to have my money work for me rather than me working for my money. I literally would start and end the day. I jumped out of bed. I literally jumped out of bed at fucking 1:30 in the morning at one point to try to get to an initial coin offering that I had read about as I was falling asleep. And I jumped out of bed, got back out here, and I'm like fucking around and got to the initial coin offering, and yeah, that's craziness. So Bitcoin and ETH did well. So what I did was I took that initial investment out and rolled it into other things. So what that means is I started looking into altcoins. I looked into Cardano, Neo, Ethereum, Litecoin, Nano, XLM. Okay, let's put it this way. Basically what was happening was I would take $1,000 out from one coin or something like that, right? I would pull $1,000 and I would put it towards another coin, whatever was hot at the moment. And I would take that coin, and if it went up, I would pull out that initial $1,000 and put it to another coin. And I did that with 67 different coins. But it was all off of that initial investment, at least at first. Because as soon as I noticed it doing well, what I did was I stopped putting into the brokerage and I started putting into cryptocurrency because the return was higher. Eventually, I think with everything, like all of the rolling the different monies into different coins and everything, in December of 2017, my crypto portfolio was worth $225,000. I looked at that and I was like, hell yes. Hell yes. We're out of debt. We are free and clear. We got this, right? I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait like a month and see how it does. Cut to January 8th, 2018. Markets collapse. Portfolio worth 21K. So that was below what I invested. With all the rollovers and all that stuff, the bubble fucking burst. So January 8th, 2018, that's a fucking day right there, friends. Because had I sold out, height of it all, had I sold out in Vegas, I would have had Vegas money because our holiday party was in Vegas. So what did I do, folks? What do you think I did? What do you do when that happens? Yes, Jay-Z, that's the saying. It is like trying to catch a falling knife because you're gonna get hurt. Fuck yeah, I hodl that shit. Hodl it hard. But not only hodl, but because I had learned about things like Cardano and these different coins, I knew the potential of what they're talking about. I continued to do what I had done through 2017. I dollar cost averaged in. And so that means you just put a little bit away and you buy, and you put a little bit away and you buy, and you put a little bit away and you buy. And you keep on doing that so that you end up with, while you're paying a variable amount and you're not like, oh, I bought all these things at like $5 and then they went to $100 and now they're fucking great. You're like, oh, I bought some at 5, I bought some at 7, I bought some at 350 when it tanked one day, and I bought some at 10, and I bought some at 15. And eventually you put in $3,000, but the investment is worth $9,000. I DCA'd in, and I continued to DCA in, waiting for the next bull market, which, as we know, friends, has recently happened. My thought was to pay off a little bit of those student loans, right? So wait for the bull market and pull out investments on the way up. As you see it doing this, you're like, okay, well, it's gotten to this point and it may go higher, but it could go fucking lower. Oh, I do have to point out here, Tiny Girlfriend called me on this shit by saying, you should pay your student loans off with it. And then when the market tanked, she was like, and I hugged my head in fucking shame, right? Because the whole time I'm like, Kelly, look at it, fucking, it's so cool, look at that. And then fucking, Tiny Girlfriend is Daniel's girlfriend. And we all hang out quite a bit. So she is allowed to give me no end of shit on this sort of stuff. So this time, watching this bull market and having those investments, I went, okay, I can take a little bit here. I can take a little bit more. Okay, I can take enough that I've taken out my initial investment. That's what I'll do. I'm just gonna take out my initial investment on everything. Pulling money out and just, you know, kind of putting it back into the system and going like, okay, because some of this stuff is not long-term gains and some of it is short-term gains, I have to put away whatever I'm taking out, and it needs to be plus 34% to be on the safe side. So calculate whatever I'm taking out, add 34%, and that's how much needs to come out, because I'm going to have to pay taxes on it next year. And that has to go into a savings account and wait around so I can go to my tax lady. What do I owe? Okay, here you go. It's right there. I don't have to pay on it. I don't have to pay the 4% interest to the IRS for the monthly payments to pay it off. So it just needs to be available, right? So if you're taking out of this sort of thing and you haven't held it for more than a year, always take out an additional 34% and put it into a savings account. If you held the stock, security, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency for more than a year, then take out 15%, because that's the capital gains tax for short term. Late last year, I pulled out a bunch, and I've been holding on to it, watching this market and trying to play the market a little bit. As Jay-Z says, catching the falling knife. And here and there, I've had some wins. Here and there. Recently watched Bitcoin skyrocket, right? So within the past 5 days, it went from 50,000 up to, this is the global average, 58,000, I want to say. It might have gone higher than that on other exchanges, right? But been watching this happen. Somewhere in here, friends, I sold 3/4 of a Bitcoin. So I promised a bittersweet ending, right? So say hello, friends, to my Navin account. So you can see the interest rates that are just killing me, right? But you can also see that I just made a really big payment, and you can see the current balance. We owe 22,000 there, and 18,000 there, and 52,000 there. So that's an awful lot of money, folks. I guess, don't make sure and think really hard before you take on student loans, because they have put me into a place where I've put off everything in my life to pay off my loans. Look at these numbers. It's a tough place to be in, but there's so many people that are slammed with this stuff. And I'll tell you, I am nervous as fuck right now, because clicking submit on this is a huge fucking deal. And my heart is pounding so hard right now. There you go. And that, as they say, is that. Friends. Thank you. Sorry. Just need a minute. Thanks, friends. That's pretty intense. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you for being here for that. And, whew. I can't. Thank you guys. Thank you. Wow, I can't even. Dazzle Pants, thank you for that. Thank you, Joby. Thank you, friends. Whew, that's hardcore. Yeah, it's done. That's it, right? So, wow. Thank you for destroying that hype train. Thank you for the subs. Thank you for the cheers. Thank you from the community to all you wonderful people. So much appreciated. I appreciate you guys. And thank you for going on that long ass story journey with me. Yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of my community, and thanks for everything. Thanks for the support. Thanks for being wonderful human beings to one another. And we'll see if this actually goes through. They're probably gonna be like, "You don't got that money. You've never had that money. Fuck." Yeah. And I feel like I can get on with life now. Like, there's not that pressure. And what prompted it was looking at this number here when it was $110,000 and saying, I can't look at this number anymore, and like doing all the numbers and saying I just can't. And so I had to look at any means possible to do that. And so I pulled out that crypto investment and I used it for something that's going to give me peace of mind. And I'm still going to have to work my ass off, and I'm still going to have to save, and I'm going to have to pay taxes, and I'm going to have to do all those things. But I'm not going to have to do this with the monkey of the loans on my back anymore. And you know, part of all of that is you guys and you supporting me and being there for what I'm doing here. And I super appreciate you guys. I have so much love for you guys, because you guys give me the strength to know that no matter what, I'll be able to keep going. Right? That was rather intense. Yeah. So we're just going to close this, and I want to say that I'm never going to open it again, but I'm going to have to. But that's that. I hope that it served as not just inspiration, but some kind of cautionary tale about getting in over your head. So that was a gut-wrenching hour and a half in the arts department, and still kind of shaky, but shaky in a good way. I hope that you guys took something from it. Oh gosh, I feel like, you know, if there's anything that you really should take from it, it's that every path is different, right? Every path is different, and there is no right way to go about this stuff, but there are ways that will hold you down less later on in life, that will not be a monkey on your back. The way that the system here is in the United States, it feels like servitude. And it's servitude that you're locked into because of, you know, if you don't get your education, your higher education, you're not going to be employable. And So luckily as artists, we can circumvent that by working hard, having a solid portfolio, and showing that portfolio to the right people, and skipping over that stuff. Going to places that don't care that you have a degree, a piece of paper. I should have prefaced all of this by saying I wanted to have that degree because it was something that was important to me, and I made the choice in school to stay in there, and that was all on me. So I am glad that it was all on me to figure out a way to get through it, right? And I 100% consider this luck, that I was able to pull out that little bit in Tesla right at the right time and put it into cryptocurrency, and that I was able to keep kind of back and forthing with cryptocurrency to get to the point where I can pull out a portion of the cryptocurrency and keep it there and use it for this. Now, I also pulled out a savings, so I'm going to have to reestablish all of that. But like I said, a lot of it is luck and reading a lot of papers on investing and all that stuff. And I wish all of you that are burdened with this, student loans and debt in general, I wish all of you a fast, positive way through it. And I hope that it comes together quickly for you. Like I said, I've lived paycheck to paycheck my entire life. I've lived in this same apartment since school. I've had the same vehicle since school. It's paid off. I have never had a new place. I've never owned a new vehicle. I've never done any of those dream things because of that debt. Because every time that I went to do a thing, I said, oh, well, I should probably just put the extra money. I should just do that. I should just put all that money towards the student loans and get out of debt sooner. And it was always that sort of thought process. And fuck that. Just fuck that, right? But if you say fuck that, then they just keep saddling you with debt. You just get more and more of it. And like, how is this legal? So friends, if you're thinking about going to school for art, if you're thinking about taking on any type of debt, I think ultimately the advice I would give you is really think about the overall cost, not just the monetary cost.